Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Australians delivered a surprise election result on Saturday, not because of who won, but by the scale of the victory. Now, it marks a strong recovery for Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and his centre left Labour Party, which had been slumping in the polls earlier this year. And this follows a similar swing away from Conservatives in Canada in the early months of the second US presidency of Donald Trump. Now, are these results an impact of anti Trump drive, a rejection of his policies, and the hate campaign? Could these results have an impact on a slew of countries which are slated to go to polls this year? And also, what could be the impact in America now, as well as India, if any? Joining me now is a very special panel. Sanjay Kapoor, International Affairs expert, joins us this evening. Thank you so much for joining. We have Dr. Aftab Kamal Pasha, diplomat and international affairs expert, again joining us this evening. Thank you so much, Dr. Pasha. And we also have Mohsin Raza Khan, who is an international affairs expert from the Jindal University. Thank you so much, Mohsin, for joining. And I'll begin with Dr. Pasha. How do you see this election result in Australia? Does it look like an outright rejection of Trump's policies?
Yes, this elections in Australia on Saturday, I think they are very significant given the re-election of Mr. Anthony Albanese. As you said, was trailing behind for quite some time, but he has very energetically articulated policies which are inspired by Australian national interest, their values, the long history which he spoke about at length during his election campaign throughout the length and breadth of the country. And more specifically, indirectly, without naming President Donald Trump of the United States, he said, we don't need policies which are hurting our economy. We reject trade war, we reject the kind of policies which are emanating from abroad. We have our own uniqueness in articulating our needs, and his focus was on climate change, on cost of living, and on immigrants, and various other issues, housing, for example. Some of these issues were key in swinging the votes of many people who saw in Anthony a patriot, a nationalist, even though Australia, like Canada, is very closely racially linked to the United States and Europe, because most of the immigrants are from Europe and have very strong links with the United States and Europe. And they are linked strategically, economically, culturally, politically. But Australia has a large component of indigenous people, immigrants, who make up substantial population and who contribute quite a lot to the prosperity. And even though Australia is part of the Indo-Pacific strategy of the United States and the West to contain China, but it has its own policy of strengthening relations with the Pacific Islands, with ASEAN, even with Korea and Japan. They have a certain nuanced policy as far as containing China is concerned, because China is a very big trading partner of Australia. So all of these factors put together, and what he indirectly projected as destructive policy of Donald Trump, which was rejected by the Australian masses, electorates who are very sharp and intelligent, and Peter Dutton, who was the other opposition leader, he campaigned on the platform of whatever Trump stood for, against climate change, calling the media as hate media, denigrating the immigrants, and not speaking much about the housing and cost of living issues. So he was branding himself as another Australian Donald Trump on the right-wing agenda, I think, which has been decisively rejected by the smart Australian people. And I think it is in continuation of the setback which Donald Trump has received from Canada, the northern neighbor, whom he denigratingly called the Prime Minister as governor and 51st state. So all these two major Western allies of the United States have given a decisive slap on Donald Trump and his policies, even though they are very closely connected with the United States. I think this is a lesson not only for India, but also for the rest of the countries which are engulfed in Donald Trump's trade war and the kind of extreme policies which his advisors are advocating. I'll stop here.
Right. So you see this as a setback for Donald Trump. But Mohsin, how would you really see the national election results in Australia? Do you see this as an outright rejection of Trump's policy, the anti-Trump drive which was seen because of his tariff regime and all of that, and the Labour Party victory? What does it mean for Australia and also for those countries which are scheduled for elections now in the coming months?
Yeah, the kind of uncertainty that Donald Trump created in the United States, also the kind of wild fluctuations in both tariff rates and in the stock market, actually has spooked potential right voters in both Australia and Canada. So in Australia and Canada, they've gone for more moderate, centrist politicians. The people have, in fact, the voter has turned so far against conservative or extreme views that both the challengers lost their own seats in Australia and in Canada. That is quite unusual. It is one thing for the party to lose. It's another thing for the leader of the challenging party to lose his own seat. So the reason is simple. They've seen the chaos that Donald Trump has created. It's turned them off. His behavior, if they don't feel he's a rational or balanced leader, nobody wants somebody so toxic and so destabilizing at the top. And then the United States is also going to soon find out the way Trump is behaving. He has seems to have invited a recession, because this kind of uncertainty often leads to a recession because people don't invest because of uncertainty, tariffs moving here and there. Foreign investors and domestic investors don't invest. And when they don't invest, what it does is it pulls down investment. And as you know, GDP consists of four components: consumption, investment, net exports, and government expenditure. So if investments start going down, and then people also become a bit spooked, so private consumption also goes down. They don't want that kind of a outcome for their country. They saw their own stock portfolios and their retirement portfolios, which largely consist of stock options, wildly swinging. And so they turned against Mr. Dutton. Mr. Dutton was the challenger in Australia, and Albanese, who at the beginning didn't look like he would have a large margin of victory, turned out to have a thumping victory. In fact, it's the largest margin in recent times. It's the same thing in Canada. It
No,
looked
but why
like
do you think also, as far as Dutton is concerned, Donald Trump was seen and heard saying that, oh, he doesn't even know who Dutton was. Now, why do you think he made a statement like that? And he, in fact,
who
congratulated Albanese for it.
Mm, mm. Donald Trump said he doesn't know who Dutton was.
Yes. I read it on CNN somewhere. He said that, oh, he doesn't know who Dutton was.
It's quite possible. Donald Trump is not very well informed, so it's quite possible he doesn't know who Dutton was. And the second aspect of Donald Trump's character is he doesn't like to be associated with losers. He thinks of the world in only two forms. That is winners and losers, he thinks. And he wants to be a winner and associated with winners. So that's quite obvious. He would have, even if he knew him very well personally, he would have not acknowledged it. Same thing in Canada as well, the kind of uncertainty, especially for Canada, that Donald Trump created, it was a different level of uncertainty because he kept talking about annexing it. He kept talking about, and in fact, there are still some residual tariffs, on a lot of goods, including steel and aluminium and car parts, etc. Even though he has suspended other extreme tariffs, the base rate remains, which is affecting Canada harshly, and it has evoked in Canada a form of nationalism which was quite unknown to Canadians. Canadians are the least nationalist people you'll find in the world, but under the threat of being absorbed in the United States and the kind of economic shocks that they've been hit with, they swung hard away from the right and the conservatives. In fact, the conservatives had a very good chance of coming to power had Trump not emerged and not behaved in this manner. So he gave a very unlikely victory to the liberals.
No, but after Australia's victory of Anthony Albanese, people feel that this election result will bring stability to Australia. But as far as the ideological shift is concerned, Sanjay, I'll come to you now. That do you see this election victory of Australia as a setback to the right wing movement as well? Somewhere down the line, people feel it that way. But what is your assessment?
I think with Trump coming in, the definition of right and how it was being stated or being described has changed quite substantially. People were nationalists earlier; they would not be taking cognizant of what US was doing. I mean, it was there at the back of their mind. But Mr. Trump has been very aggressive in everything that he's been doing. He's trying to show that many of the people who are trying to come to power from the right wing space don't really matter. It started off with, if you remember, Germany. You had the AFD party, which was there, and Mr. Trump, as well as his sidekick, if you allow me to say that, Elon Musk, the Tesla owner, they were pushing very hard for this right wing cause there. So there was a bit of a boost because those early days when Mr. Trump came to power, but substantially they finally lost because uh, people in Germany recognize that if they allow AFD to come to power, then they would be not really gainers but be losing plenty of stuff, even their identity. And Merz joined together with the socialists to form this government. And this, in a certain way, it's been a shift back as that trend started with Germany. Now it's come to Canada, and now it has come to Australia. So, in a certain way, all the so-called allies of the US are voting with their legs and feet, hands, and trying to show that they don't want the kind of dominance Mr. Trump is trying to enforce on their politics. I'm sure even the other countries in Europe, if they get an opportunity, they will also vote against Mr. Trump, and it will be a major rebuff for Mr. Trump, a major lesson that whatever he may be doing, it doesn't really add up to anything significant.
But Professor Pasha, I'll come to you now. What is going to be the impact on India, or do you feel that there is not going to be any impact? Or if I may ask, are there any learning lessons for India and for Prime Minister Modi from this election results in Australia?
Yes, I think so. Because here also we have a right-wing government like the Israeli Likud party or Trump and the Republican party there. You see the kind of divisive policies BJP, RSS, and the NDA bloc have been following. You saw the parliamentary election results last time. The BJP could not get the numbers which it had got earlier. So it was much reduced in the parliament. And this was mainly because of the kind of policies India is pursuing. Indians are by and large secular in their approach. Since independence, an attempt has been made to establish a secular society, an inclusive growth model in which all the minorities and others will be stakeholders. By excluding and targeting a particular group, which BJP has been attempting for the sake of votes and electoral gains. This has impacted the majority community also, who see this as divisive and polarizing attempt, and the kind of communal hatred which has spread, and the strengthening of the right-wing forces. Which defy the rule of law, which defy even injunctions from the courts, whether higher courts or lower courts. So there is a sort of impunity which has been given to these groups, which resort to some kind of violent methods, lynching, or so-called love jihad, and whole litany of issues are there. So this kind of right-wing policies are detested by majority of the people, majority of the Hindus, in fact, if I can be specific. So the steam has run out of this kind of approach, not only in the South Indian state where I'm speaking from, Bangalore, where people disapprove of the kind of hatred which is being spread, the communal venom which is spreading to every nook and corner. So people have become tired of this kind of approach, making and unmaking of elected governments and muzzling the state institutions across the board and manipulating governments and use of money power and corporate gains, whether it is Ambani or Adani. These kind of policies can take the BJP only this far. But beyond a point, they have to see the reckoning, writing on the wall from the common people who have endured the demonetization, the COVID, the immigrants issue, the unemployment issue, various other things which are chosen. For a small peon's post or a clerical post in UP or Bihar or Rajasthan, hundreds and thousands, in fact, lakhs people apply for one government post. Can you imagine this kind of a situation where the Prime Minister talks about very great things? Of course, Indians constitute the largest young population. They are working hard and trying to develop the economy, but you cannot ask the people to tighten their belt beyond a point. And if they are pushed to the wall, they will act decisively in the state or parliamentary elections. That is the message which this ruling dispensation have to take, because cost of living is the decisive factor. People are concerned about their welfare, the loans they have taken to buy houses or vehicles for education, for the daily needs. All this fear of stock market uthal-pathal or upheaval, or the recession, and the kind of policies which are being pursued. Because you see the kind of double policy which this NDA government is pursuing. On the one hand, they say we are following strategic autonomy in foreign policy. But on the other hand, you see everything emanating from Washington and USA, what the Pakistani military leaders were doing earlier. This leadership also is doing. Where is the autonomy? Where is the independent policy you see, whether it is on tariff or any other issue? Even, in the present Pahalgam crisis, who is behind us? Even the United States is trying to equate India and Pakistan. They are urging caution. They don't want any escalation into a regional conflict. So it goes to show, you see, the Americans don't want us to become an economic power. They don't want us to become a military power. They don't want us to import weapons from the Russians, or they are sanctioning. They don't want us to import oil from Iran or Russia. They are sanctioning our companies, whether it is the oil companies or shipping companies or computer companies, accusing them of having links with Iran and Russia. So a strategic partner like the United States, shouldn't be doing this. Shouldn't be on the side of Pakistan, which they consider still as a major non-NATO ally. The links between the ISI and the Pakistani military and the United States Pentagon is very strong. They think that Pakistan is strategically important in their looming war over China, and also through Central Asia to Russia. So, we have to be very cautious how far we can go. All the prime ministers since 91 have worked for a close relationship with the United States. But it appears now it is one-sided. Only
Right.
we are going out of the way to accommodate the American interest. I'll stop here.
Right. So now, what I was looking at the international papers and the kind of headlines which have come across, and Guardian has put out a beautiful story talking about the various newspapers, how they've put the headline, and it's interesting to see how they put it. Now this the Sunday Telegraph has put a cover story saying it's so Albanese, not Albanese, but they're saying it's so Albanese. Then similarly, Daily Telegraph has said beyond blue. That's the kind of headline which they have said. Then the Australian, that is a newspaper, it says Albanese supremacy. And similarly, some have said red wine. That is the kind of headlines which have come across various newspapers. But Mohsin, I'll come to you now. What is the Australian election result, which is being talked about so much on the social media and in the media as well? What does it really mean in a sense, if I ask you, what does it really mean for the world? And what does Albanese's victory mean? Yes, Mohsin, can you hear me?
As I said, it means basically, yeah, I can hear you. Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Am I clear?
Yes.
What it means is, as I told you, people want stability. People don't want that kind of crazy behavior. People are spooked by Donald Trump's behavior. They want a more stable economic situation. As Professor Pasha said, what will determine elections almost everywhere, including India, is cost of living. It's not that. Just 1 second.
Yeah, your audio is breaking in between.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The cost of living will determine everything, both in Indian elections and in rest of the world. That is, if people feel that they hello, am I audible?
Yes. Go ahead, Mohsin. Go ahead.
Yeah. As soon as people feel the cost of living is rising, or that they are not benefiting from hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay.
I think you are getting a call.
Yeah.
I think you're getting a call on your phone. That is why the frame is changing.
Sorry. Yeah. So as soon as the cost of living changes, people all over the world, voters all over the world get upset. And it will be the same in India as well. If the stock market, if there is some upheaval in the economic situation due to tariffs, you will see an adverse reaction against the ruling party. This could also come from foreign policy. I would say, even the Soviet Union, even Russia today is not standing with us. We were told that if we stand by the Russians during their Ukraine crisis, they would stand by us. As you know, we took on American and European disapproval when we bought oil from Russia in such large quantities. But today, even Russia is not standing with us. So imagine it's not standing with us when we are confronted by Pakistan. Imagine what will happen when we confront China. Russia and China are so close. Most likely, in fact, almost 100%, we can be sure Russia will stand by China. So if we have a foreign policy misadventure, either with Pakistan or with any of our other neighbors, you might very soon find that the Indian voter might also change his or her behavior. So it could be largely the economy, but there are these other one or two factors, such as if there's a grave foreign policy crisis, etc. So the present government better watch out.
All right. So the concluding remarks, I'll end with you, Sanjay. What do you really have to say on this Australia elections? And I'll come back to the India question. Will India have any learning lessons from this victory? You have to unmute, Sanjay. I think you muted. Yes.
I think it will be very premature on our part to jump to conclusions and think that India would be impacted by Australian election. There are two different things, or two different animals. Australian economy is their position in the world hierarchy in terms of growth. Everything is far different. India is a country which is very not so easy to predict. I'm not even sure about the cost of living index. Does it really matter in India? Because I've covered so many elections on foot and otherwise, and I find that people vote for some reason or the other. But for instance, in the last 10 years or so, there's been so much money which has been deployed with people in terms of house loan for building toilets, and not loan, but also grants which have been given to people. So every family benefits by about 10,000-12,000 bucks. So they're not too worse off compared to what people think it is. So it's a different thing, and people are basically secular, but they don't want a government which doesn't have a focus. They're happy with Mr. Modi and whatever he's doing. So we may not like what he does in a certain way, but that's the tragedy. Like 3 terms, he's been able to come to power, and we're not very sure what will happen in the 4th term. And they have a way to manage elections. They have a way to do things. So in a certain way, I don't think India will see the same kind of reaction as that of Australia and Canada to the rise of Mr. Trump. But I can tell you, Trump rise in a certain way, let it impact the Indian economy,
But
where
Sanjay,
people start
will
losing.
the Australia election mellow down Trump in any way? That's my last question to you.
I'm not sure Trump will be. He's got no 2nd term, no 3rd term to look for, so he'll push his agenda. Can
All
I
right.
take leave? Can I take
Yes,
leave now?
yes. I'm anyways
I
ending. So
I don't I don't
yes, Mohsin, you wanted to say something?
I don't think Trump cares what happens in Australia at all. I don't think that will have an impact on Trump's behavior. What will affect Trump's behavior will be what happens in the US, that is in polling data and in the US midterm elections. That
Right.
might have a effect on Trump's behavior. But that's still a bit off because midterm elections are still 1.5 years away.
All right, so we'll have to wait and watch how things unfold. We'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, Professor Pasha. Mohsin, thank you so much for joining.